Hi everyone, so for our video today, it's just going to be a very casual type of a video. Let me just arrange this properly. Okay, so this is just going to be a recap type of video from my recent trip to Bali. And I know that I said in a previous vlog that I was going to be vlogging the entire time I was in Bali, but I actually changed my mind on the day that we arrived, mainly because I was actually in Bali because we were celebrating my partner's birthday. And I didn't want that every single time that we were together and we were doing things, I was just constantly taking videos, or trying to find things to vlog about, because that was not the purpose of why I was in Bali. So I hope that you understand that. And I hope that you don't mind that we're doing this, but I do think that this is actually a great way of doing it, because at least I get to share my experience there, especially post vacation, because there are some things that I realized that I didn't like and liked about this trip to Bali. Now, this is my fourth time that I have visited Bali, and there are some things that have remained the same, like the traffic, and there are some things that are quite different. So I'm hoping that you guys enjoy this and you find this insightful, especially if in the future you're planning a trip to Bali. Okay, all right, so before I get into what I've been doing for the trip, let me just say that one of my most important skincare products that I brought to Bali is actually this sunscreen. This is from VMV Hypoallergenics. This is my most favorite sunscreen ever. This has SPF 70. This is silicone based, and this has actually protected my skin for years. I have been using this for at least 10 years, and I don't go anywhere without this. And this thing that you see on my face right now is the effect that this sunscreen leaves on my face. So it's skin color true, it doesn't have any ashiness, and I love that I have this very nice dewy finish on my skin. Now, the other thing that I also like to do, but this is like a post vacation kind of a skin treatment, or the thing that I want to do just to rehabilitate my skin, because usually I have noticed is that if I go swimming in the beach, if I go sunbathing, I always end up getting some blemishes on my skin and my body, and that's inevitable. So when I come home, I always use this VMV Hypoallergenics clarifying body soap. So this one has salicylic acid in it, and this just really helps to clarify my skin. It just really helps me to get rid of all those bumps and things that I picked up while I was on vacation. Like example, I would get mosquito bites, insect bites. So this clarifying soap just really helps to get rid of the redness and any inflammation caused by all of those things. So these are two of my most important skincare products that I always have on hand, whether it's going on vacation or after vacation. Well, first things first, Bali is actually 3 hours and 30 minutes away from the Philippines, so it's actually not that far. And we actually arrived in our hotel in Seminyak at around 2 in the morning. Our flight was actually severely delayed, and the main reason why is because we had a big storm here at the time. Although the storm was technically far from the landmass of the Philippines, but because of how big it was and how strong it was just really bringing in the monsoon rains from South China Sea, and it was really inundating the country. And I think that if we would have flown a day later, we would not have made it to Bali, because there was flooding going on here in the Philippines. I think there was zero visibility in the airport. I'm very lucky that we were actually able to fly out that evening. Now, in Bali, we stayed in the Seminyak area, so I always stay there when I am there. And the main reason why is because I've been there before, so it's a familiar place, and I know where to go and I know where to walk. We stayed in a hotel called Hola Seminyak. It's a very nice hotel. It's not really a boutique hotel, so but it's good enough for my partner and I. Now, it had a very nice pool in the property, and then our room was located on the second floor, and it was a small room, but again, it was good for my partner and I. I'm not sure on how whole the property was, because I can see that there's some paint that's chipping from the wall, and then I can see some degradation of some materials in the bedroom or in the bathroom, but it was fine. It was fine, especially for the price that I paid for that. For 3 nights, I believe I paid under $200. I think, if I remember correctly, I'm gonna put the price on the description box below so that you guys can check it out. And I also booked them through booking.com, by the way, which is the main website where I always book when we travel abroad. So I really liked it. And the good thing about our hotel, Hola Seminyak, is it was tucked in a small street away from the main area. So although, like, the main area of Seminyak can be quite noisy, it can be quite hectic, it can be quite traffic, but because it was tucked away in a small street, it is actually very quiet in the evening. So that was actually great. The only thing that disturbed us, like one time, I think it was like around 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, there was a guest who just started screaming, like, for his friend, I think on the hallway near the stairs, because our room was right at the corner of the stairs in the hallway, like, asking for money, because I think they were already checking out at that time, and I think they came out from clubbing, and I believe they must have been intoxicated. So that's that. And I think it was also the same people who jumped into the pool at 5 in the morning, which, like, really irritated me a little bit, because there's actually, like, instructions at the side of the pool saying that the pool is only open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. So there are really some people who are, like, obnoxious, and there are really some people who just doesn't respect, like, some rules and regulations that are set by, like, the establishments. And unfortunately, our rooms were not well sealed in terms of, like, it being able to muffle the noise from the outside. But other than that, it was quite pleasant. The bed was nice, the pillows were nice. The only thing that was unfortunate about the room that we were staying at is the air conditioning broke down on our final evening there. So they were actually able to fix it. They actually wanted us to move to a different room, but my partner and I opted not to do it because it was a room that didn't have a balcony, and I'm sure you've seen on the video that our room had a balcony. And if they were to move us, they should have moved us to a room with a balcony. So, and the main reason why is because my partner has a little bit of some claustrophobia, and he doesn't like it when he feels like he's in an enclosed space. And unfortunately, the room that they were going to transfer us to actually felt that we were actually quite enclosed and there was no sun coming in. So but anyway, so we're actually very grateful that they were actually able to fix the air conditioning unit, and we actually stayed in the room that we paid for. Now, what I love most about, walking around the Seminyak area or walking around Bali in general is that you can actually see a lot of, like, the morning rituals that the locals actually do in their temples, because Bali, if you don't know this already, is actually a Hindu island, and that's actually quite special because the rest of Indonesia is actually a Muslim country. So that's what makes this island a little bit magical and a little bit special. And I love seeing, like, the rituals that all of these, like, people, all these offerings that they present to their temples, or even, like, in front of their stalls during the day to ask for blessings. I really love that. It's actually one of the best things that like, just seeing it happening at real time, it's just very, like, enriching for the soul. Now, our first meal in Seminyak in Bali was actually brunch, and it was from the restaurant called Sister Fields. Now, when we woke up, like, very, very late that morning, the first thing that I searched on Google is, like, breakfast place or brunch place near me, and Sister Fields came up first. And when we went to the restaurant, it was full of people, a lot of tourists. And when I actually read the menu, it was a very Western type of a menu. And it was actually good. I had some bacon and eggs and toast and some coffee. The coffee was absolutely amazing. And I totally understand why it's actually quite popular there. Now, for the price of it, I believe I paid around $30 for my partner and I's food, which was a little bit pricey. It was like I was eating in an upscale, like, restaurant here in the Philippines. So, but I mean, it wasn't that bad because the servings was actually great. It was a lot. My partner and I we were actually full all the way to late afternoon. So that was actually great. So if you are going to Bali and going to Seminyak, try Sister Fields. Okay. Now, what we did the rest of the day, on our first day there, and also the next day, is that we just stayed at the beach. We stayed at Seminyak Beach, actually, and it was I think a 20-minute walk from our accommodations, and we had to pass through one of the main streets of Seminyak, and then we passed through one of the side streets that led to the beach, and from the beach we walked a little bit further down until we reached a spot where we actually liked. So what we did is that we actually rented some beach beds, and we just lounged the entire day. We just bought foods from the restaurants along the beach, and we just watch the world go by. And that's what my partner and I like to do. We just like to take it easy. We don't like to do hectic stuff, and we just enjoy the scenery. We enjoy the wind, and even if the waves are a little bit strong, and there was actually a red flag on the beach that day, which meant that it was a very, very rough sea for us. We still dipped into the water, but we didn't really go far into the water because, again, the waves are very strong. We didn't want to be swept by the waves. And also, the lifeguards on duty there are also very strict. So if they see that you are, treading very far into the water, they'll actually call you to come back in. So that's that. And also because the waves are very strong, you can actually see a lot of people learning how to surf or learning how to ride on a surfboard. So it's actually a nice way to see what's popular in that area of the beach. Now, in terms of food, my partner and I at the time, we would just buy traditional Indonesian food in a small food stall by the beach, and it sells a lot of Indonesian food. So we really love that because us being Filipinos, we love to eat rice, and because Indonesian is very similar to Filipino food, we're so happy that there was rice there. So that actually was a very nice experience, a very traditional type of experience, and also the cost of that food was actually quite affordable. I think it was only around 50,000 rupiah for the both of us. So again, it was actually that great.
And the most beautiful thing about being in the beach in Bali is that the sunsets are absolutely beautiful, and I'm sure you guys can see that here in the video. And that's why for the first 2 days that we were there, my partner and I just stayed up until sunset, and we just enjoyed the sun setting below the horizon. And around this time, the beach also comes alive to a certain degree, wherein people have sunset drinks, by the beach, and there are some people who have cold beer by the sand, and they're just enjoying the atmosphere that the sunset brings, and it's actually quite beautiful. And that's why when it was our time to head back to our accommodations, my partner and I just had a very leisurely walk by the sand, because you don't get to see views like this all the time. After freshening up at the hotel, it was time for us to head to dinner. So my partner and I went to a restaurant located at Seminyak Art Market, and the restaurant was actually called Mai Mai, and it serves traditional Indonesian food. And I actually had some babi goreng, so I had some pork with some fried rice and egg, while my partner had some chicken and rice, and we had some salad also on the side. And we actually loved it because aside from it being traditional food, for us it's comfort food of some sorts, and that's the type of food we actually like to go to.
Now, our third day in Bali was actually my partner's birthday, and I was actually able to book a tour for that day. Now, my partner was very specific on what he wanted to see on his trip there, and he just wanted to see the fire dance. So, upon arrival in Bali, that was the only time that I actually started to book a tour, because before flying out, we had a huge storm here. So, I didn't know if our flight was going to be canceled, things like that. So I didn't want to deal with doing any cancellations just in case our flight didn't make it, okay? But it did make it. So that tour actually included the fire dance that he wanted to see. Our tour started first at Tanala Temple, and it was located an hour away from our accommodation. So it's a little bit far, okay? And Tanalot is actually a beautiful temple. And the only thing that I have noticed, about visiting there right now, is that before you actually arrive at the main gate of the temple, you have to go through the market first, where you are inundated with a lot of merchandise, and I didn't really like that. It wasn't as hardcore before as it was now, so that was the only thing that I was surprised about. So after going through the main market area, we arrived at the gates of Tanalot, and we went down the steps, and I still love how beautiful this temple actually is, and I love seeing all of the temple architecture of the temple complex, this very thick um, roofing made of black, I don't know, grass, I think. So it's actually very pretty. It's very beautiful. And then Tanalot is actually located a little bit offshore from the beach. And unfortunately, when we arrived there, it was actually high tide, so you couldn't actually go into the temple. But the thing is, when you go and visit a temple in Bali, you're actually not allowed to go inside the praying area, and I think it's just a mandate by the government that only locals are actually allowed to enter the main praying area of a temple. So even if my partner and I would have arrived there during low tide, we would not have been able to enter the temple anyway. But I was able to see that there was a priest, in the temple who was actually blessing people who were actually able to reach the foot of Tanalot. Now, there was somebody there who was showing people that there was a holy snake in the area, and I go why is there a snake in the area? I don't remember seeing a snake there before, or I think there might have been a snake there before. During my first trip there. So I think some things never changed. So I was I'm a little bit iffy with snakes. They don't make me comfortable. So if that's your thing, you can pet the snake, and you can always give a tip if you want to actually hold the snake, or just touch it even. Now, since we're not able to enter Tanalot Temple, what my partner and I did is we actually went up to one of the temples also in the complex, and we just follow the steps, and we were actually quite surprised to see that there were actually a lot of restaurants in that area that offered a lot of actually best to visit Tanalot Temple things like sunset that, because I believe I could see in some with the pamphlets in the colors of the sunset, the oranges and the reds so, coming through. This is when I actually realized that so pretty, and from the vantage point of the restaurant, it's actually a nice view to actually watch. So Tanalot Temple is a very big temple complex. There are smaller temples within Tanalot that you can also visit at the same time, and they're located in various parts of the complex. So when you walk around, you can see the Tanalot Temple from a different vantage point, and I could just only imagine how beautiful it would be during sunset. And of course, you can also see some people surfing the waves in this part, because the waves are also quite strong, especially here at the bottom of the area where it nears the cliffs. Now, we finished the Tanalot Temple at around 11 in the morning, and it was time for us to head to lunch. Now, lunch was located in a restaurant in Kuta, which was around 2 hours and a half from where we were, and I was actually very surprised on how much time it took us to get there, because I did not remember traffic to be so heavy in Bali. But anywho, when we got to the restaurant, the name eludes me. I'm going to put the name on the description box because I actually did save it. They actually served amazing Indonesian food like nasi goreng and mee goreng. So it's rice and pork, or noodle and pork, and it actually came with baby back ribs. It was actually very, very good, so we're actually very happy with that. Now, after that, we then drove for I think another hour and a half to Uluwatu Temple. So Uluwatu Temple is one of those big temples in Bali that's actually open to tourists, because not all temples are open to outsiders, if you know what I mean. So it's actually very pretty there. Um, I love walking through there. And then if there's one thing that you guys have to be careful with when you go into temples, there are some temples that have monkeys. So Uluwatu has monkeys, so you have to be very careful with your eyeglasses, with your caps, with your whatever trinkets that you have in your hand, things like that, because some monkeys are actually known to snatch these things from out of your hands, and they have learned to actually barter for your things. So and this is how intelligent these macaques are. Wherein, like, if they get your eyeglasses, you would need to offer either a piece of fruit or food in order for them to return your glasses. So um, if you don't have a guide, make sure that you keep all of your belongings, like, tucked in your bag, and you don't leave anything like dangling on your chest or on your head. But if you do have a guide, I'm sure they can actually help you to recover your lost things. But there's a 50-50 chance that you might not get back your things. Okay, so again, Uluwatu Temple is located by the sea, very beautiful. Like, you can see the waves crashing in the bottom of the temple. And again, the temple complex is actually very big, so you'll tend to walk around and, like, check out the stuff, and you can see, like, the praying area of the temple. And I do remember the last time I was there in 2017. I was with my friends, and we were actually quite surprised on how full the temple was. And I really thought that it was also going to be that way, but it wasn't. And the main reason why is because there were no celebrations on that day, because I believe when I was there in 2017, it was like, their New Year celebration. So they celebrate this thing called, like, Quiet Day, where everything is quiet. So there were, like, a lot of offerings in the temple. Like, there were a lot of people praying in the temple. So I was actually quite surprised to see on how quiet it was in Uluwatu Temple at this time. And it's actually quite stunning. It's quite stunning. Now, also in Uluwatu Temple, I was actually very surprised to see that there was a caged white monkey in the area, because that wasn't there when I was there in 2017. So I was actually very surprised by it. So I actually read in the placard that they actually rescued this monkey, and they were actually very surprised to have seen it in the area, because there have been no sightings of white monkeys there before. And because he was very different from the other monkeys, he was actually in very bad conditions when they found him, because the other monkeys were attacking him. So can you just imagine, like, you being attacked for being, like, very different, which I guess is not very far from how we humans are, if you know what I mean. And I'm actually glad to see that they were actually able to save the monkey, and just, putting him there just can actually save him from being attacked by other monkeys in the area. So that's that. So we actually spent a little bit over an hour in Uluwatu, and from there we drove again for, I think, around 45 minutes to an area called Melasti Beach, because that is where the Chekak fire dance is going to happen. So there's this very popular show in Bali called the Chekak fire dance, and that was actually one of the things that my partner actually wanted to see when we went to Bali. So I was just actually very surprised that we have to drive again to that fire dance, because in Uluwatu there's a very popular fire dance there, and I thought that we were actually going to see the fire dance in Uluwatu Temple. But I was actually very surprised when our tour guide told us that no, after staying here for an hour, we had to drive to another part of the island to watch a fire dance. And go like, what? We're driving again? So that actually didn't happen before, so I was actually very surprised with that. But anyway, so apparently this is a new theater, and I actually kind of like it better than the one in Uluwatu, even if it was more popular. And I kind of like the fact that like, we had a much more bigger auditorium, and like, the backdrop of the theater is actually the sea, which is actually fantastic. And I kind of like the fact that like, the auditorium is not facing the sunset, because that was the only thing that I didn't like about the fire dance that was shown in Uluwatu Temple, because the sun was setting in front of you, and it was actually very, very hot. Like, people get toasted. Like, I do remember I would cover myself, like, from head to toe with a scarf or with a blanket or with a towel or with a hat, whatever, because I just didn't want to get burned by the setting sun. So that's one thing that I was actually very grateful for, this new theater showing the fire dance. So my partner was actually very enthralled by it. He loved it. What I liked about this Cheka fire dance, presentation is actually they had more, theatrics in it. They had more dancers in it. and they had more secondary actors, because the previous Czech dance that I saw, we only had the main actors in there. There was not really a other actors to help give you an idea of the scene that they were playing, because the Chaka Fire Dance, they actually show some scenes from the Rama and Sita play. So this is actually quite good. So I actually do recommend this.
Now, of course, because I am a makeup artist, I was actually very happy to see the makeup style that they used for their play, and I was actually very happy to see that their makeup style was actually a reflection of their character, and it really enhanced their expressions on the stage. And I love that they like using strong colors here, you see very nice blues on the eyes with pinks and reds as transition colors. I love the lipsticks, and although the makeup style is actually quite theatrical, you can see some contouring in the nose, on the cheeks. I think if you just dial it down a little bit, you can use this for every day, especially for a nice dinner out, if you know what I mean.
Now the Chaka Fire Dance usually always starts around sunset, and it actually lasts for an hour well into the evening. So after the Chaka Fire Dance, my partner and I hopped into the car again, and we drove for I think another hour to get to Jimbaran Bay, where we actually had dinner in one of the restaurants that was part of this tour. So I think eating in the restaurants along Jimbaran Bay is a little bit overrated. The only thing that I don't like about this dinner food package that we got is that the seafood package wasn't that great. The crab was very small. I was not able to get any meat out of that. The shrimp was very small. There was some rice, there was some fish, but again, it wasn't that amazing. I wasn't wowed by it, and for someone who loves seafood, it was okay. I think there are much more better places where you can actually eat around Bali, instead of Jimbaran Bay. Although, if you find yourself in Jimbaran Bay, around sunset, I'm sure that would have been a fantastic area to actually hang around. But I think you can skip that, if you know what I mean. But it really depends on you if you want to experience it or not. So I am not going to recommend this tour guide, by the way, because I don't think he planned this tour of ours properly, and I feel that I paid way too much for this tour, because it cost around $70 per person for this tour. It included a car, lunch, and dinner, but there were some stops on the tour that was listed on the website that we didn't get to see, so I didn't really like that. So I think I got shortchanged, and I also didn't like the seafood, the food choices that was given to us for dinner. After doing the tour, I think that it shouldn't have cost us $70 per person. And I also think that one of the main reasons why my partner and I didn't like this tour as much as we would have hoped to have liked it is because we were stuck in traffic for such a long time, driving from one place to another. Can you imagine? We were picked up at 10 in the morning in our hotel, and when we got back into the hotel at 10 in the evening. So it was a very long and hectic day, and half of our time was actually spent in the car. So that's one thing that you guys have to prepare yourself with, is that if you go to Bali, you'll be stuck in the car when you're doing touristy stuff, because it is actually atrocious traffic. And also one other thing, I actually don't understand why they actually paired Tanalot Temple with this Uluwatu tour, because Tanalot Temple is actually very far from Uluwatu. It's like on the other side of the island. So I'm like I could have totally scrapped that Tanalot tour and do it on a separate day instead of pairing them together, because it was just too far from each other. And again, spent so much time on the road, and it was just it was bad planning. And I don't think that the tour guide actually thought this through, because I was actually the one who had to remind our tour guide, this tour includes our lunch and dinner, right? So I actually think that he was actually very surprised that I raised that up, because he was not expecting that I would have said that. But again, for the price that I was paying, that was what I was supposed to get as it was listed on the website. So on the fourth day that we were in Bali, it was our time to move to Ubud. And before we head out to Ubud, we spent a few hours, basking in like the pool in the hotel, and we actually had brunch in this place called Revolver. Again, it's one of those very popular, restaurants that is frequented by a lot of tourists. And again, the menu is actually very tourist centric. But the food is actually great. The coffee is actually great. They were actually very, very welcoming, and the servings again were a lot that it was able to keep me full for the rest of the afternoon. Now, for our transfer to our hotel in Ubud, I actually had to book a Grab car. So a Grab car is similar to an Uber, and I was actually quite surprised that it actually took us a little bit over 2 hours to get to our hotel in Ubud. So again, when you're going to Bali, you have to expect that you have to be driving for hours at a time to get from one point to another. Okay, so but I was actually very happy that when we got to our villa in Ubud, it was actually called Barong Bali Resort, and it was located by the rice paddies, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was gorgeous. It was very quiet. It was very different from what we experienced in Seminyak. Although we were quite very worried about how far it was from the main areas of Ubud, but again we actually loved it. We loved that we were away from everything, and we were just surrounded by nature. And what I loved about our hotel there is that they already have their restaurant, so we didn't have to worry if we would get hungry. And because there is actually no public transport in Bali, that if you want to go one place to another, you would need to book a car in advance to get there. So that's the only downside about traveling to Bali. You just can't go to the town center on a whim, but you really have to plan it so that you are able to rent a car, and you're going to use the car for its worth, because you just can't rent a car for to go to town and go back to your hotel and then rent another car to go somewhere else, because that's a total waste of time and also a total waste of money. Now, I loved our hotel in Ubud. So technically, we were located in Tegalalang, and it's actually near the rice fields and the rice terraces in Bali. And I was actually not expecting our resort to be a romantic villa, because it was only when we got there that I realized that, oh, this resort is actually catered to either lovers, which my partner and I are, and also to newlyweds, because it's very conducive to those types of romantic getaways. And our villa, we had our own dipping pool, we had this very nice bed, and we had mosquito nets around it, which I absolutely love, because my partner and I, we don't like using air conditioning too much, and because and Ubud, by the way, it's cooler there than in the rest of the areas in Bali, like around especially around the beach area, because those in the beach areas, it was very humid. But in Ubud, it was actually quite cool, like to the point, if you've seen me in some of my videos on my shorts on here on YouTube, or on my Instagram reels, I was wearing a light sweater in the mornings when I was there. So it's actually very, very nice. So our villa also had a little roof deck that overlooked the rice paddies, so it's actually a nice area there to actually have some coffee or have some drinks with your loved one, whoever you're there. Now, this resort is actually not friendly to kids. So if you are a family and if you want to experience something like this is not the hotel for you. But there's actually a hotel 400 meters away from where we were, that was like an eco touristic type of a hotel. Again, I'm gonna put the link down in the description box so that you guys can check if you're actually interested to go to Bali with your kids. And that would be great for you guys, because there's a playground there, and there are swings. There's also a big pool for everyone, so you guys can actually check that out. But I love Barong Bali villas if you are newlyweds, and if you want to have a resort where you can spend time alone with your partner, this is a great villa to have. Now, what we did for the rest of the afternoon on the day of our arrival is that after checking in, after checking the room, we actually started walking around the village of where we were in Sibatu. And we really loved it because we saw a lot of woodworks, we saw a lot of weavings there, and we just saw the traditional form of lifestyle that these people have in the area, and it's actually again very enriching, and it just reminds you of the things that you have to be grateful for, and the experiences that it just really has a way of enlivening your mind, if you know what I mean. And I'm also grateful that in our walk, we were actually able to find a convenience store because water was a little bit expensive in the restaurant. And speaking of water, by the way, tap water in Bali is not potable. So just make sure that when you drink water in Bali, it has to come out of a bottle, okay? Because it's really not that good. Now, anyway, so also one thing that I was very surprised to find in Bali was Yakult. Now, Yakult is a yogurt drink that I have been drinking since I was a kid, and I was actually very surprised that I found it in the hills of Ubud. So I was really, really happy with that. I actually bought a strip which has 5 canisters in it. So I really, really love that. Now, the following day, I actually booked a half-day tour of Ubud, so like a 4-hour tour of Ubud, because my partner doesn't like getting stuck in a car for an extended period of time. It drives him nuts, and I think I can connect that to his claustrophobia. He doesn't like being stuck in one area for a very long period of time. And even when we went to Morocco years ago, he was really I think it was driving him a little bit nuts. He was stuck in a car for like 8 hours at a time, driving from one part of Morocco to another. But yeah, anywho, so even for our 4-hour tour of Ubud, it still got to him a little bit because again, we spent so much time stuck in traffic, even in Ubud. So yeah, but anyway, so we started our tour in Ubud. By having lunch first in one of the restaurants. Again, the name evades me, but I have it listed on the description box. Okay, so it faces one of the rice terraces in the Tegalalang area, and it's actually a nice area to have lunch at because the surroundings look absolutely beautiful, and you are served traditional Indonesian food. So I had some nasi goreng, but this one I had seafood instead of chicken because usually you have chicken or pork. So, but I haven't tried eating seafood nasi goreng before. So, I'm actually glad that I tried it. It was so good. It was so delicious. Now, this restaurant also had their own swing, wherein I'm sure you've seen it in a lot of social media posts like on Instagram, wherein you're swinging on a swing. So I think this is one of the things a lot of the restaurants along the rice paddies of Tegalalang have. They would have a swing now for you to hop on, and I think you wanted to wear the very nice silken scarf that billows in the wind when you swing. You would need to pay like around 200,000 rupiah for that to rent that. So maybe that's part of the swinging. Okay, so if that's your thing, you can do it while you're actually having lunch in Tegalalang. So after lunch, we drove to the center of Ubud, and we actually wanted to go to the market area of Ubud. Now, when we got there, I was actually very disappointed because it wasn't the market that I remembered seeing when I went there before. Because I was expecting to see a lot of traditional baskets, traditional textile weaving, but I was actually very surprised to see that it was very tourist centric, and it was just like a lot of souvenirs, and there were even a lot of knockoffs that were being sold, and I go like, this wasn't what I had in mind when I wanted to come here. And my partner Chola was also a little bit disappointed because it wasn't what he wanted to see, and we were actually very sad about that because, like, for example, I have this basket that I bought from Bali years ago, and I do believe that I bought this in Ubud, and this is actually like, where you can store your fruits or even some food. And like, look at that, look how beautiful that is. Even like, there's some paintings here, there's even like, some paint inside. And I was actually very sad that I didn't see any of this, because the last time I was there, they had a variety of shapes for baskets like these. So they had it in like a rectangular shape, they had it in a square shape, and I actually wanted to get some of those in those shapes instead of having a circle like this, because I have a lot of this here in my home. And I was again very sad that I wasn't able to see it. Like even my partner, he wanted to, hey Tanner, so even like my partner, he wanted to buy some of those like, wooden lamp shades that were like, woven, but he wasn't able to see that. So if you do decide to rent a car going around like, Bali or like in the Ubud area, and if you see any form of like, traditional artwork at the side of the road, do tell your driver like, hey, can we stop here like for 5 minutes, because I want to see this. I want to see like, the carving, I want to see like, the lampshade, I want to see the chair, whatever that you want to see. Please do so, because you will not see that in the main market area in the center of town. May it be in Seminyak, may it be in Kuta, may it be in Ubud. It's all tourist centric and it's all souvenirs, and there's nothing traditional that you can actually buy in those areas at this time. Okay, so after spending a few minutes at Ubud Art Market, we darted off to Pura Tirta Temple, and my partner actually wanted to visit this temple ever since I showed him pictures from my previous trip. And what's so special about Pura Tirta Temple is that it's actually a big bathing complex wherein you can actually participate in the cleansing rituals. So I'm actually so happy that he was able to do this and he was able to tick this off his bucket list, because aside from the fact that this is a very traditional form of of an experience, it's actually a very it's a very spiritual experience, because it just has a way of calming you down. It just has a way of centering you. And I just really love the fact that in using water, it kind of like cleanses your mind, body, and soul, and I really love that. So, if ever you do decide to do this, here are a few things that you need to remember. Is that one, you would need to rent a sarong in the temple complex, and you would change in a changing area, which is not divided between the sexes. So men and women change in the same area, okay? And also one other thing, you need an offering. Now, I'm actually so happy that my tour guide, Kadek, who toured us around Ubud at that day, actually bought some offerings, because I can't seem to remember where I was going to buy some offerings. I'm so glad that he um, prepared some for Cholo and I. And I think we spent an hour during doing the cleansing ritual, and mainly because there were a lot of people there, and also there were a lot of water spouts you would have to go through in order to finish the ritual. So your tour guide can actually guide you in doing that. So if you decide to go to Ubud one day, please do not in any way miss out going to Pura Tirta and Bol. Now, I actually did book 3 nights in Barong Bali, but we actually only stayed there for 2. And the main reason why is because our flight was actually leaving at 1 in the morning. And while I was doing the booking process, I said to myself, I think it's better if I book 3 nights, because if I book for 2 nights only, it's gonna rush us, if you know what I mean. And we'd spend so much time packing, and then we'll also have to worry where we leave our luggage, and then we'll also have to worry where we'll be able to shower before heading out to the airport to fly out. We were just able to really take it easy and enjoy our time together, and we were just moving at a very nice pace, and we didn't feel like we were rushed. So I really love that. So on our final day in Ubud, what we did is that we actually hiked in the morning after breakfast to a waterfall near our accommodation, and it's actually called Ulu Pitanu. So it was around 25 minutes walk from our accommodation, and it was actually a very nice hike. And what's so amazing with the waterfall is that it takes around 90 steps to get down to the bathing area, and then you're actually able to explore the immediate area of the waterfall. It was a very nice hike. Like, I was actually very surprised. There was a cave there, and like, if you just go through the cave, like, it's only 150 meters, and you'll actually end up in the other side of the hill, and you'll end up in another park in the areas. And there are also like a rock formation that looks like a skull. So people actually, like, I think they pray to that because maybe they find something supernatural in that rock formation. So I really love, like, seeing things like this because it just, like, opens up your imagination and your understanding of the world. And that afternoon, we actually went around town again because we wanted to see things that we can actually, like, bring home. We only found one which my partner liked, and it's actually this very nice basket here. So this is actually a basket for offerings. So what, like, the locals do is that they fill this with food, and then they bring this basket to the temple, and then the temple priest will actually, like, bless it, and they will actually bring it back to their home, and they will actually, like, eat it because, like, it's already blessed food. And I love the container here. It has a weaving of green, yellow, black, and red, and it actually holds a substantial amount of stuff inside. Look at that. And, like, we're actually going to be bringing this to our home in the province, and we'll be using it for storage for fruits like bananas, mangoes, and apples, and things of that nature. Isn't that so pretty? Now, my partner was actually hoping that they will be able to attach a knob into this, but they actually won't be able to do it because it's not, like, part of the design or the overall use of the basket. So that's that. And this one was actually quite affordable. It was only at around 150,000 rupiah. So the price was actually not bad at all. Now, I actually did not buy a lot of stuff when I was there. My partner bought me a sarong. If you take a look at that, a very nice sarong. But I think this one, it says here that, like, the lady who was selling this to us, she goes like, "Oh, this is like a batik sarong." I think the design is batik related, but this wasn't printed using the batik style because if I do remember, the batik printing, you actually use wax for it, and this one looks like it's, like, mechanically made. So that's that. But other than that, this was quite affordable. I think around 200,000 rupiah, which I think was a little bit too expensive, but it's not so bad at all. I kind of like it. It's a nice reminder of our trip to Bali. Now, the other thing that I bought, by the way, so it's actually a book, and it's actually a book about the history of color charts by Anne Darishon, and I love it. I haven't read through it yet, but I just love, like, reading the history of color charts, and, like, the explanations of how color charts came to be and how they were preserved over time, starting from the 13th century all the way to present time. Like, it's just, like, feeding the nerd in me. So I really love that, and I'm actually quite surprised that I was able to find a book like this, like, in some small bookstore somewhere in Seminyak. Okay, yeah, so that's my experience about my recent trip to Bali. So my final thoughts is that Bali is highly commercialized right now. It caters to a lot of tourists. So I'm sure you can find your own spot of heaven in Bali. It depends on what you like to do and what you want to do. So just do ample research before you go there so that you're actually able to find things that caters best to your personality. Okay, and also one other thing, as I've said earlier, there's no public transport in Bali. You would either need to rent a motorcycle or a car, or you would need to hire a car for the day. Now, I actually did hire a car to pick us up from the airport to bring us to our hotel in Seminyak, and that cost around 350,000 rupiah. So, which is not bad. And then my Grab service or my Uber service from Seminyak to Ubud cost me around 500,000 rupiah. So that one was a little bit expensive. And my rental for 4 hours around Ubud, I think it was around 550,000 rupiah. So at least in me saying the prices about, like, the rentals for cars there, it's gonna give you an idea of how much you're actually going to spend. But do take note that if you are going to be touring for an extended period of time, like for a whole day, so you might pay for around, so a car might cost you 600,000 rupiah, but depending on how far of the locations of the areas in Bali you would like to visit, it can go to, like, 1 million rupiah just to rent a car. Okay, so that's something that you have to have in mind. And motorcycles are cheaper to rent. If you have the guts to drive around Bali in a motorcycle, then do so. I cannot do it because people in Bali drive on the left hand side of the road, while here in the Philippines we drive on the right hand side of the road. So I could not in any way drive on the left hand side, especially if it's my first time to do so. Okay. Yeah, so that's it. So if you guys have been with me to the very end of this video, thank you so much for watching, and I hope this video has proved useful and insightful. And if you have any more questions about my experience traveling to Bali, please let me know down in the comments box, and let's have a conversation about it. Alright, so that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you're having a good day wherever you are. Bye bye.